Hey guys, welcome back to your regularly scheduled Shonen Jump broadcast. The series that have ended this batch just won Alien Headbutt, and I do have a lot to say on this one. And then after that, I will start talking about my first impressions on the new series in Jump this batch, which are Animal Signal, Hal Formula, and Canon Master. Alright, first up, Alien Headbutt thoughts. I'm gonna give you a little warning. I'm about to critique the Shueisha/Jump editorial department and I guess the manga industry a little bit as a whole, and I'm gonna be quite harsh about it, so if you don't want to hear that, feel free to just skip to the Animal Signal section and we'll start talking about the new stuff. Alien Headbutt by Akira Inui. This series should not have been axed. The cancellation of Alien Headbutt at 16 chapters, which is pretty much a record low. Very rarely are series cancelled before 18 chapters. It's indicative of larger issues with Jump's editorial department and its current serialization model. By all means, by every sense of the word, Alien Headbutt was a diamond amidst a bucket of mud, and Jump essentially reached into the bucket, plucked out the diamond, tossed it to the curb, just to revel in the mud. Needless to say, personal thoughts, I love this series. Alien Headbutt in every way is exactly what I look for in a Jump/Shonen series, and I was so ecstatic to read the first chapter and give my first impressions. I instantaneously fell in love with the series essentially, and I was very happy to have a wrestling manga about wrestling aliens. That's just so much fun at the base concept. Not only was it power of friendship battle action, but it also had cool art, aura farming moments, and a likable protagonist who treasured his family. And that kind of stuff is essentially exactly what I read shonen manga for. I want to read something fun and badass, and that's nice sometimes for escapism, but also has like a little pinch of good messaging. Alien Headbutt did all of that amazingly, and how often is it that we get to read a cool wrestling manga, which is like a sports series in a way, but also it's a fun battle series. You know, it's kind of like how Blue Lock is about soccer, but also it's a battle shonen in some respects. Alien Headbutt kind of made the sport of wrestling this thing that anyone could enjoy, and that is incredibly impressive. It was so fun to have a main character who is a heel in wrestling, which are like the bad guys, quotation marks, and he keeps that wrestling personality even when he goes to fight aliens to protect his family, making him the good guy in a way, but he keeps like that heel personality. That was absolutely lovely and wonderful to see. And of course you could say it was just shonen battle slop, but it's a shonen magazine. I'm here to enjoy the battle slop, and I enjoyed it so much. Unfortunately, once we got to the end, it started hitting the bottom of the TOC, and that's something that kind of just makes me so depressed. The way the entire TOC is handled in the magazine in general. But if you're not like a huge Weekly Shonen Jump nut, the TOC just stands for the table of contents. So for each issue of the magazine, there's a list of series in the front that essentially tells you what order the manga are printed in the magazine for, and generally the less popular series are printed at the back of the magazine. So if someone says the series is at the bottom of the TOC, oftentimes it means that the series is not really doing well in popularity in the magazine. Of course, that's not the end-all be-all, because sometimes series just need to be moved around for any given reason. They spread out the color pages sometimes, or a new series will be at the top, even if it's not necessarily the most popular. But if a series has been around for a long time and is consistently pretty low in the TOC, that's not a very good sign of how the editorial department is viewing that series. So Alien Headbutt hit dead last in the TOC, and it was essentially dead last for a couple weeks in a row, and immediately the fans were like, something isn't right here, and they tried to rally and talk about the series more online and post screenshots and recruit people to read the magazine, but by then I think it was already a little too late. You could essentially tell after a little while that the editorial department at Jump had already told the mangaka that the series was getting cancelled, so he hit the gas super quick and the plot sped up immediately toward the end. I think in the course correcting, they also probably told him to add fan service, because in the chapter that the series sped up, they introduced this anthropomorphized goat character who was very obviously meant to be some kind of like waifu baiting. That is my only issue with the entire series. I think the mangaka handled even the pacing speed up as best and as gracefully as he could, and still managed to stick a fantastic ending. By the end, it got me hooked all the way back on board and wishing that I could really read like 20 more volumes of this. He really stuck it at the end, but that one inclusion of that waifu bait character, that's like my one issue with the series, because it feels so out of character for the series. The fan service in the series is very much not like boobs and butts, it's wrestling aliens, which is obviously the fan service that I love. But when they introduced that character, she was very clearly a little bit more along the lines of cute girl baiting fan service, and it just really made that moment feel weird, because that character was a baby goat, not just in size but also in the family hierarchy, kind of painted to be the youngest member of his family. It was a little bit weird, and it definitely felt like some kind of editorial department meddling, because if I was the author, I would not have wanted to make the goat character into a cute anime girl. I would have wanted to make the goat character into a cool anime horse monster, a steed of some sort that the main character could ride in battle and also be his partner. That's the kind of thing that I would have felt would be more in character for the story, but I understand possibly why they did that, which was to try to get more eyes on the series to save it from being axed. Unfortunately, it didn't seem to help. A lot of fans did like the goat character. I think the waifu baiting did work a little bit, it just didn't work enough. The author apologized in their last author's note in Weekly Shonen Jump, which was just so deeply depressing. Like, no, Akira Inui, do not feel like you need to apologize. You did everything the best that you could, and your manga was the best that you could make it. You did really good, and I look forward to seeing what you make next. I'm kind of super pissed off about this one, honestly. I broke my 4-year Twitter posting ban in order to post things from Alien Headbutt to try to give it a little bit of a boost in the community and support the hashtags and the artists that were posting in the Alien Headbutt tag. I even posted my own art into the tag to try to help a little bit, which is something that I really do not like doing because I don't like feeding my art into the Twitter AI mulcher. The fans were extremely desperate to save this series. We were trying our best. I don't think it helped that the promotional videos that Weekly Shonen Jump put out on their YouTube channel got a very low number of views for Alien Headbutt. Between the 3 series that launched that batch, Underdoctor's video was the most popular, and then Kinato's Magic, and then Alien Headbutt was dead last, and it was not even a close competition. So I don't know if it was just not popular overseas or what was up with that. Those videos are not published to the Western audience, so it doesn't really gauge Western reception. They're only in Japanese. And yes, that is like a numerical metric of the series' popularity. However, I'm just gonna say this. As a company, Weekly Shonen Jump should be able to stand behind the series that they launch, even if they're not necessarily immediately popular at first with the audience. Have the backbone tone to stand behind your series. I don't think digital views on a YouTube video or digital views of the chapter week to week are necessarily the best metric for measuring how popular a series could become or how good a series is, because not everyone reads digital manga week to week as the chapters come out. A lot of people do read stories in the tankobon collected format or the physical volumes, and axing Alien Headbutt before the first volume sales figures even hit, which means you don't actually get to see how much Alien Headbutt makes compared to other manga. It's kind of not fair to the series. But it's also not fair to the magazine, because these kind of impulse axes can only harm the magazine as a whole. I really think that Alien Headbutt was the strongest series out of all the 3 that launched in that batch, and without Alien Headbutt, look at what we're left with from that batch. We're left with Underdoctor and we're left with Kinato's Magic, which are 2 series that I don't really find add anything to the magazine. Whereas if you follow the magazine, you know that a series that's gonna end very quickly, very soon, in the next couple weeks is Sakamoto Days, which is a massive battle action pillar of the magazine. Neither Kinato's Magic or Underdoctor are battle action pillar potentials. Kinato's Magic is fan service, and Underdoctor is... I don't even think Underdoctor knows what Underdoctor is. Regardless, it's not comparable to Sakamoto Days. Whereas Alien Headbutt very much had Sakamoto Days replacement potential. And hear me out on this one. Sakamoto Days is a battle action or a farming manga with some comedy and some feel-good moments, whereas Alien Headbutt is a battle action or a farming manga with some comedy and some power of family type of stuff in it. I think out of all the recent series that have launched in Jump, Alien Headbutt very much was shaping up to be a next pillar of the magazine, and that was very clear to me as a reader. I could tell immediately within the first 3 chapters that it had really good potential. I compared it to not only Baki in my initial review, but also Hajime no Ippo, because those are also kind of wrestling / martial arts mangas that have lasted for a long time in their respective magazines. Wrestling matches, there's a lot of creativity that you can have with that sort of initial base premise. Throw in the alien creatures aspect that Akira Inui brought in to mix with his martial arts wrestling, and you could do essentially anything with that. Monster of the Week type stuff. You can go on to do battle royale type stuff. You can have a tournament arc. You can eventually go to space and wrestle aliens on the moon. There's no end of creativity we could have with that. It very much had potential to set up as a long-running series, and with it gone, now I'm just thinking, after Sakamoto Days is complete, what's going to take its place in the magazine? If you've seen the tweets, we will talk about it in a little bit, but again, that's not a new property, right? That's just a temporary band-aid, a short-term serialization over the hole that will be there after Sakamoto Days concludes in the magazine, which is happening very shortly. I don't know what level of planning and what level of foresight goes into these kinds of axe decisions, but recently I've been thinking, hey, maybe not enough planning and foresight goes into it. It just really gets frustrating as a reader to see the magazine continue to axe them for whatever reason. Honestly, financial reasons aren't even enough for me, because as a company, if you start investing in these series, you should put a little more faith behind them and give them a little bit more marketing, a little bit more push if they're not doing well financially. But if they're struggling, on a manga quality level, that's when I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's not popular because it's not good. Astro Royale is the example I bring up all the time, because what do you mean you got the mangaka of Tokyo Revengers to create the next big hit in your magazine, and then he essentially just created the next Tokyo Revengers, like it's very much just Tokyo Revengers again, but in a new setting as a new IP for Weekly Shonen Jump, and then they axed that prematurely at 50 chapters. You asked the guy for Tokyo Revengers and he gave you a Battle Royale Tokyo Revengers type manga. You know, like, what more could he have done? The art for that series was good, the characters were good, the battles were fun. You know, if it wasn't pulling numbers, I don't really care. I just wanted to read his work after Tokyo Revengers, and the Jump editorial department decided if they couldn't make cash money off of it, then the readers didn't deserve to read it. I don't want to keep watching new series hit the shredding fan and one potentially manages to just luckily squeeze through, while some that are really good end up getting shredded in the meat grinder. If you're going to be that picky, then just make sure every single new series that's launched is really that good, and once they pass your quality inspection before serialization, back it up. So even if it doesn't do well, that just means that you need to give it higher places on the TOC so more people read it. You need to give it more promotional posts. You need to give it more advertising. That's really all there is to it. Do a trial run with new mangaka and their new serializations to make sure that they can hit the weekly publication schedule that you have set for your magazine. By implementing this policy, you can avoid future Gonron eggs by making sure that the new mangaka that you recruit for your magazine can actually draw their series week to week and not have their art falter. That's definitely a thing that should have been caught before Gonron Egg started serialization. It would be a pre-serialization test run. So for example, week 1, the new mangaka would draw chapter 1. Week 2, the new mangaka would draw chapter 2, as if their manga was going to publication every single week. Furthermore, there should be better screening with potentially test audiences before a manga decides to go to serialization. So if the mangaka submits his test chapters, the chapters should go in front of an audience of people who read Weekly Shonen Jump so they can give feedback for corrections potentially. For example, something like Hakutaku, if they would have put that in front of me, chapter 1, as a test audience, of course under NDA and stuff, I could have easily given that mangaka advice, which included, if you want to make a manga about video game programming, I would suggest leaning away from making it seem closer to battle action shonen, right? A video game process is not something that can be completed in one chapter. Maybe start with the character not really knowing about programming and then teach the character the basics in a way that can also teach the audience the basics about programming languages. I think something like that would be a lot more fun and hit a lot better with potentially kids that are interested in programming versus what actually happened in Hakutaku chapter 1, which was this kid in high school just randomly decided to make a game. We don't get to see any of the process of making that game, and by the end of the chapter he has a finished game, and that is the entire manga. That is a very weak premise and start for a manga, and I think, you know, probably fed into a lot of why that manga did not succeed. So, you know, these kinds of basic things help weed out series that have no chance before they even hit the magazine, which means once a series hits the magazine, Weekly Shonen Jump should at least guarantee them like 3 entire volumes of manga, and then after that, make the decision whether or not to axe the series, right? So we can have some pre-sifting so we don't get all the mud and the muck and the rocks, and make sure at least everything that's publishing in the magazine has the potential to be a semi-precious gem in the rough. And then last critique point, if you were to tell me that Weekly Shonen Jump this year in 2026 has cut costs by firing all of its editors and replaced them with a single sticky note that says, if your series is struggling, add fan service, I would completely believe you, because the series that have been struggling recently, they all just end up adding more fan service to their manga. It's very much low-hanging fruit. It's like the lowest of the low that you can go, literally, because the camera is panning up people's skirts. It's just so lazy. Just throwing in panty shots is not gonna save it. I was beyond baffled when, 75% of the way through Gonron Egg, all of a sudden it became like the thigh manga, and the last shot of the big bad of that series had that character with all their limbs chopped off on a torture table as amputation fetish bait. I was just staring at that panel going, what the hell is this? Not only did it not feel like the same series it was at the beginning of the manga, but also it absolutely did not improve the manga in any which way. It actively lowered my opinion of that manga by several levels. Instead of adding waifu bait into a series, if a series is struggling, the editor really needs to help the mangaka improve their specific series and their specific series' issues. That's all just to say, Alien Headbutt, my final rating is 4 stars. I was tempted to actually lower it down to 3 because of the rushed pacing, but because the mangaka recovered it at the end in the last chapter, I think I still will give it 4 stars. I honestly would recommend giving this a read. Okay, let's get into the new serializations. The first one was Animal Signal, kind of an educational manga that is also a com-rom, so comedy first, romance second. I do like the base premise of the universe, which is that there are people in the universe that are animal people, so they have animal traits, and that gives them kind of superpowers. So a lot of the series involves the main characters going around and solving various mysteries and problems relating to people with animal superpowers, and they do this through animal facts, non-fiction, National Geographic type facts about animals. I love the educational aspect of the series. In fact, I think it should be more normalized for shonen magazines to run educational manga. Again, these are magazines targeted at school-age children. It definitely makes sense that they have a series in here that's sharing animal facts. Unfortunately, I think this series feels a little bit young because the characters do not look and they do not act like high schoolers. They look and act like middle schoolers, and that turns this from something with interesting animal facts into something that's like National Geographic for babies. It feels a little bit picture bookish, but then there's also fan service in it. So here's my thing. You can have a series that is like a little bit younger in Jump, I don't see any issues with that, and have characters in the series that act like middle schoolers. And you can have fan service, but you can't have those things at the same time. If the character has the emotional maturity of a middle schooler and they look like a middle schooler, then I don't want to see their leggings vacuum suctioned to their gooch. Needless to say, this series is not for me and I am dropping it. It's not the worst it could be, fan service wise, but my tolerance for bullshit is just so low. The next series is Hal Formula. This one is a racing manga by the author of Green Green Greens, which was an axed golf manga. This is by far my favorite of the batch, so I don't think I've ever read a racing manga before. I know Initial D recently got licensed in English, but I have not had the chance to check that one out yet. But racing is very fun. It's definitely a sports manga, so it starts out with the premise of this guy that's not very good at racing, and his dream is to get better at racing, and that's the classic sports ball premise without the ball. But it's good. I like sports manga and I like the setup so far, so I am looking forward to seeing where it goes. I'm gonna give this one 4 stars, probably 3 for the setup alone, but then I'm gonna add 1 more star for the author's bravery in choosing a sport where he has to draw cars. That is thinking outside of the box, and it's very fun. I definitely learned more about car racing than I knew before reading the manga. For example, I did not know that there were other things besides F1. The lower tiers are called like F2, 3, and 4. So the lower the number, the better you are at racing. That's pretty interesting. I did not know that before. I look forward to learning more about racing as this series continues. Off to a great start, and I am very hopeful that the series can stay in the magazine. The third series that got launched this batch is Canon Master, which is a fantasy battle shonen series. Unfortunately, I did not like this one. So our most recent battle fantasy shonen series in the magazine was Gonron Egg. I will say, fantasy series are more difficult to do well than something like a rom-com or a slice of life high school series. So I do, give it a little bit of leeway, but also this was just not good. It's actually kind of worse than Gonron Egg to me in some ways because it does not feel unique at all. When I read this first chapter of Canon Master, I just kept thinking about other series where I have seen these same tropes before. The writing for Canon Master feels a lot like the writing for Odor of the Flame, and I dropped that series despite how good the art was because I could not handle the writing. And this is just more of the same thing. It's just essentially bashing us over the head with the lore of the universe in a way that is not only boring, but also feels very tropey. The base premise of the series is that there's monsters and people have to fight the monsters. I did not feel hooked by any aspect of this manga. I feel like the author attempted a mix between One Punch Man and Mob Psycho without really understanding the draws of either of those two series. So it's got the power fantasy aspect of One Punch Man without the clueless side that makes Saitama endearing and that makes that series funny. So it's just pure power fantasy, but it's not cool enough to be cool because the series undermines it with comedy. So it's power fantasy that's not One Punch Man funny, but it's also not Solo Leveling cool power fantasy. It tries to add a comedic aspect with the introduction of these two characters that are very clearly meant to have Reigen and Mob's relationship from Mob Psycho 100. But it has that dynamic without any of the characterization that makes Reigen and Mob's dynamic iconic. You don't really know anything about these two characters except for the tropes of their dynamic. You don't get to see the Reigen character's charisma or cunning or anything, and you don't get to see the Mob character's kindness or his inability to handle situations. It's very literally just that the Reigen character is a hack and the Mob character is overpowered, and that's it. I'm not a power scaler, but we can talk about it. So they say that this main character is super overpowered, but we don't actually get any indication of just how strong he is because this is like the first guy we've seen fight in the series, because we just get to see him punch a dragon. And okay, so we know he's more powerful than his mentor and this group of normal civilians, but does that mean he punches dragons better than the other people who do have powers in the series? Or is he weaker than them? We don't actually know. So it feels like the series is telling us, oh, this character is really strong, but it's not showing us how strong they are or how impressive that is. It's not even oh, this guy can defeat everything with one single punch. That's crazy. It's just this guy can punch things good, but that's not unique in any aspect. It's a shonen series. A lot of shonen protagonists can punch people really good. And because the Reigen character continually says things like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy, it kind of undercuts the actual cool aspect of the power scaling. You can say what you want about something like Solo Leveling, but at least the main character does look cool when he does what he does. Yeah, he's powerful because he's the main character, but he is powerful and he does look cool. Whereas something like this, you see the kid punch something, but the moment doesn't get any room to breathe or just sit with the confidence that it showed you a really cool dragon punching page, it has to cut in with the commentary from the other character saying, "Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. I can't believe he's so strong." As if the series is insecure about its ability to convince the reader that what they just read was cool. So it has to tell you, like, hey, if you didn't think that was cool, rest assured that was cool, which has the opposite effect of actually making it less cool. I don't know if that makes sense, but essentially what I'm just saying is this series did not really impress me. So unfortunately, I will be dropping Canon Master at chapter 1. So here is the overall updated tier list. Alright, I'm gonna go from the bottom tiers upwards and do updates now on the other series that are not new ones. Hinato's magic has gotten so bad. If you watched the initial batch video where I did first impressions on Kinato, I actually gave Kinato 4 stars in that video because I was very hopeful about it. It started off quite strong actually and had a good amount of charisma. I compared it to something like Fairy Tail, and I even said, even though this series does have fan service, I will put up with a certain amount of it because it had a good amount of humor and charisma in it as well. And from that point on, it's steadily devolved into something that is now something a lot more similar to Nue's Exorcist. It's even kind of given up the guild aspect, it's given up the healer aspect of the main character, and somehow turned into like a battle shonen with fan service in it, which is literally just the premise of Nue's Exorcist. I mean, I guess the fan service is not poorly drawn, but it just feels like not even sexy. I don't know. The main character has gone from a healer support character to literally any other shonen protagonist that every single girl falls in love with and wants to show him their boobs for some reason. I'm not saying it doesn't deserve to be in the magazine or anything, I'm just saying this has completely changed from what it initially was, and I'm no longer interested in the series, unfortunately, so that's just where we'll have to part ways. Under Doctor, this series is also strange to me because I feel like it has not yet hit its stride. I would not be opposed to giving Under Doctor a second chance at some point in the future. If it survives another like 20, I'll probably pick it back up and give it another shot. Hematen, I believe, is ending soon. Shinobi Undercover, this series is actually doing really well, and even though I have personally dropped it, I'm very happy that it is doing well. This is kind of an underdog series to me. Nue's Exorcist, I don't think has been getting any real developments. It's pretty much just the same as always. Someone Hurts is another series that miraculously did really well, which I am happy about. And then Blue Box, I believe, is very quickly ending. Blue Box is not a rom-com. I would say it's a romance school series, maybe like a pinch of coming of age. And none of the series that have launched recently have Blue Box replacement potential. So I would not be surprised if we get another romance serialization starting soon, maybe in the next batch. Burn the Witch? What are you doing here? I might have to take this off the tier list because instead of getting a Burn the Witch continuation, it seems like we're getting another arc of Bleach, which is crazy. I'm going to be talking about that more in a little bit, but that is wild. To get more Bleach before Burn the Witch, it's kind of hilarious. Class 2B Hero Destroyers, I have dropped the series actually, but I'm going to leave it in 3 stars. I'm pretty confident that the series will always be a 3-star series to me. I said this in my initial impressions. Gag series are not really for me. I'm not gonna pick up a bag that says "Dead Dove Do Not Eat," open it, and then disparage the series for containing a dead dove, right? It is what it is, and that thing is not 100% my cup of tea, but it's completely fine for what it is. I did like, because the manga creator for the series is a veteran. They're the creator of Gintama. They were allowed a long prologue, which was very nice. It felt like the story very naturally flowed into the demon realm to become what it actually is. And I wish more mangaka were allowed the time and space it takes to properly set up their story and not have everything just slammed in at a breakneck pace. Roku's House of Oddities. Unfortunately, my feedback for this series chapters in this update is the exact same feedback and advice I had in my initial impressions video for this batch. I said in that first video after reading the first 2 or 3 chapters that this series is strongest when it's being heartfelt and serious, because the series is not the best at comedy, and it's been more than a couple weeks and it still continues to stumble along feeling kind of aimless because it has not locked on to one or the other. I saw someone say, oh, it must be doing well because it's relatively high in the TOC, and I can just tell that if it continues to go in the way it has been going, it's probably going to drop very quickly. There's a very clear and distinct and jarring difference between the comedy chapters and the more serious chapters. One of the most recent chapters of Roku's House of Oddities focused on Altria, the doll character, and that was her focus chapter, and the entire chapter was extremely down to earth and level-headed and pretty much serious. And by that I don't mean like, oh, it's so serious, it's not funny at all. It's just the series was taking itself serious. The chapter followed Roku spending time with this ghost that's living at his house and kind of helping her see the mortal realm, because she says that she was locked up in a room for her entire life and didn't get to see what there was to see outside. So the main character takes her around town and shows her things. It's very heartwarming, and that's where the series is very strong. But the most recent chapter, in contrast to that, has Roku taking Sachiko, which is another one of the ghosts, to the school because she wants to learn more about her curse. So they get to the school and it dissolves into an amalgamation of comedic hijinks, which culminate in a whole bunch of animated anatomical models playing a soccer game in order to parody and hint hint nudge nudge, haha, World Cup reference. I'm not going to say that wasn't funny at all, but it's very clearly a tonal disconnect, because the beginning of the chapter starts out with like a decently serious premise, which is that the ghost wants to learn more about her past, and then we get to the school and it turns into this gag comedy about the World Cup that's a little bit of a fourth wall break, and haha, that's funny enough. But then the chapter ends with Sachiko being serious again and saying that she hopes Roku will be able to help her out and perhaps free her of her curse. The tonal whiplash is crazy. It goes from making an offsides joke, which I did find very funny. Again, soccer is my favorite sports ball, but it goes from making an offsides joke on this page to essentially page flip, and bam, the chapter ends with her hinting that maybe the original Sachiko offed herself because she couldn't make it to school because maybe she was potentially bullied at school or something like that. The tonal shift is like 180 degrees. And even as Sachiko is saying she hopes maybe Roku can help her out, he's like cheering for this soccer game that he's watching of these anatomical models battling each other. It is so completely and utterly baffling to me that someone has not yet told the mangaka that, hey, maybe this needs to be either a gag comedy or a heartfelt series following this kid as he helps out these spirits in a more serialized story. It kind of feels like it's been testing the waters for the past 10 chapters or so, and by now it really should have a grip on which path it needs to follow. Some series are able to juggle those two things, comedy and seriousness, and I don't think that the series can do that because it has not shown that it's able to do that. We need to really start hitting the pavement soon, otherwise I'm worried that this series is gonna end up on the chopping board. Drawn to the Fire. Unfortunately, I have stopped reading this weekly. I knew I would not enjoy reading a basketball manga weekly, and I don't. I'll probably give it 15 chapters, and then once there's a good amount, read it all in one go and see how it is. So far, it's definitely at least a 3-star series. Witch Watch is also ending soon. I'm probably gonna read this all at once after the series is complete. Me and Robico, same as always. Hal Formula, I'm gonna put here at 4 stars. Kagurabachi is going on a 1-month hiatus, if I'm being 100%. I kind of saw it coming, and I'm glad they decided to give Hokazono a break before the art started suffering. So before we started dissolving into like sketchy Azami again, the magazine just said like, hey, Hokazono needs a break, let's give him a month. That is so important, and I hope that he's not pushing himself. The art for this most recent arc of Kagurabachi has been drop dead gorgeous, so good. Kagurabachi, the only issue I ever have with it is the art, and he's been getting better and better at it. So as long as, you know, he's not rushed every single week and he's not struggling with his health, I am very happy and excited to read Kagurabachi. This most recent arc has been my favorite of the entire series. It is so damn good, and I cannot wait to see where it goes. This series is just getting better and better. If Hokazono can maintain this level of art, I will be moving Kagurabachi up to 5 stars. The writing easily is good enough for that. I'm not gonna say anything spoiler-wise about the arc, but damn, yes. Yes, I cannot wait for the anime either. Those fish are gonna look so darn good animated. Ichi the Witch is always solid. There's gonna be a day where Ichi the Witch is 5 stars, I can tell, but we have not gotten there yet. And I have faith in it because the writer of Ichi the Witch is the same writer that writes the series Aruma-kun, which I really love. So one of these days, we're gonna get into an arc that really discusses something like grief and the consequences of that, and I'm gonna instantaneously bump this up to 5 stars. Alright, we're getting into 5-star territory. Every single one of these series I would highly recommend. Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi just got licensed in English, so if you want to read this series physically in English, you can pop to your bookstore and get a volume. I don't know if I'm going to add this entire series to my collection, but I have picked up volume 1, and I'm very happy to own it. Kiyoshi is so darn good. If you like One Piece, if you like Sakamoto Days, read Kiyoshi. It's just classic shonen battle stuff with the power of friendship. Akane Banashi, always fantastic. It's like some kind of miracle that we have Akane Banashi in the magazine, because it is very much not the typical weekly Shonen Jump manga, but it is so good. And I guess the anime has been doing well, and the character designer drew this little promo art, and all I can say is, yeah, they know what's up. Next up, Sakamoto Days. Sakamoto Days is my favorite manga. Not of all time, but it's my main interest at the moment. And I definitely have feelings about the fact that it is ending soon. I'm actually quite scared because the most recent news about Bleach replacing it makes it sound like Sakamoto Days is ending within the next 3 or 4 weeks. And although we are in the last battle, I really would have expected we would have at least double that, because even though Sakamoto's fighting Uzuki right now, the author just introduced another pairing by bringing one of the characters back from the dead, and I'm terrified what that might mean, not only like in the series. I don't think these characters are gonna let each other survive if it's a rematch, but also shouldn't that battle be at least like 4 chapters long? It doesn't feel like we have enough time within 3 to 4 weeks to have both a satisfying conclusion to Sakamoto and Uzuki's battle, that rematch, and a conclusion as a whole for the series, which I would really love at least 1 entire chapter of just seeing where all the characters are and catching up with everyone and the family again. Suzuki always makes me so nervous because he doesn't plan stuff, so I worry the series is not going to stick the landing, but my fingers are crossed so hard. I'm really praying they give Suzuki as much time as he needs to stick this ending. Sakamoto Days has been getting so much hate recently online, and it kind of makes me sad because there ain't no way you read Sakamoto Days and say it's anything remotely close to mid. It's a pillar of the magazine. I'm a little bit nervous that they don't have anything to replace it. Even if Bleach does like a Hell arc, I don't know how long that's gonna last. And if it doesn't last that long, that means after the Hell arc is finished, we're gonna be missing a pillar of the magazine. We'll see how it goes. By the way, Bleach returning 2026. How are we feeling about that, guys? The last time I read Bleach, it was like in middle school, so I really don't remember much about it. I just remember the series ended with a time skip, so I'm quite curious where this Hell arc is gonna insert in the story, if it's gonna be post time skip, and if so, would it be more like Boruto, or would it be a fan servicey continuation following Ichigo after the time skip? I'm not 100% sure, but very interesting regardless. Out of the main three, Bleach was my favorite when I was a kid. That's probably changed now, but the aesthetics were so good. It was the first one of the big three I read to completion, so I do have a soft spot for it. And Tai Kubo's fashion sense will always be excellent and very fun. One Piece is One Piecing. I could say some stuff about recent developments, but I don't think I'm going to, because I'm sure everyone else and their mama has already said the exact same thing before. I'm just looking forward to seeing where this next arc of the story goes once we get out of flashback land. Last but certainly not least, Togashi's back, guys. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. I am so endlessly excited. I think we all knew this was coming because they released the pre-order for the next Hunter x Hunter volume in Japanese, and they do that before the next batch starts, so at the back of our heads we all kind of knew Hunter x Hunter was coming back, and I am glad that it is, because Kagurabachi is going on break and Sakamoto Days is ending, so it will be very nice to have Hunter x Hunter in the magazine to kind of tide us over in this period of transition. Hunter x Hunter is #1 on my tier list for a reason, a very good reason, and this most recent arc, the Succession War arc, is my favorite arc of the entire manga so far, so I am very, very excited. I don't even remember where we are in the story. I just know that things are going to shit, and I'm gonna guarantee you that things are very quickly gonna devolve into chaos on the ship. I can just feel it. Ooh, I do remember. One of the most recent events from the last batch was they declared blank law on the ship. So I just know that things are gonna get utterly chaotic, and I'm very excited about that. Also, that means we're gonna get our next Hunter x Hunter volume in English in like a year, probably next year, and that Hunter x Hunter volume is gonna have Morena's lesbian kissing scene in it, so very excited about that as well. I do need to continue my Hunter x Hunter video series. Whenever Hunter x Hunter returns to the magazine, it's like a whole entire party. It just feels so good to know that it's coming back, and I'm glad that Togashi has been doing well recently. I hope he manages to keep up his health. Alright, let me do a very quick run through of the updates on Weekly Shonen Magazine and Jump Plus. Weekly Shonen Magazine Idolatry, which was a series that I had in the 4-star category. It is so good. I highly recommend it. It's about idol culture and also K-pop battle survival shows. It is so incredibly good and also very unique. If you like Girl Crush, I would highly recommend it. Okay, so Idolatry moved from Weekly Shonen Magazine to Magazine Pocket, which is Kodansha's digital manga magazine, kind of the equivalent of Jump Plus. It will continue to serialize, just not in Weekly Shonen Magazine. We also have 3 series that have started serializing in Weekly Shonen Magazine. By the way, Weekly Shonen Magazine is Weekly Shonen Jump's competitor magazine. This is published by Kodansha, and it is the 2nd largest manga magazine in Japan. So the series that have started serializing in Weekly Shonen Magazine are Umine, the Island Inn. This is literally just a carbon copy of the Cafe Terrace and its Goddesses, which is a harem slop fan service series, but it is absolutely not my cup of tea. And then the next one that started serializing was Yura Tokyo Exorcist City. Unfortunately, I have art issues with this series. The plot is very generic. It's kind of vaguely battle royale, Dead Man Wonderland type stuff, where this guy goes through a city and he fights people, and he has like a chick who's his sidekick. The art for the series is very strange. I don't want to say it was generated with AI, but it looks like some of the characters were traced over 3D models or lines isolated off of 3D models. It is more evident in some characters than others. Like the female character is very clearly bare minimum traced over a 3D model, and I would actually say it's more likely that they just isolated the lines off of a 3D model of her. Even her hair looks 3D modeled, whereas the male character, at least I can tell that his hair is hand-drawn. A very strange situation overall, but the end result is that the visuals look very janky and awkward because 3D models can't pose like normal humans, so there's like a lack of fluidity around them. Whatever the case is, it does not look good. It's going to be a little difficult to show you because Kodansha's digital manga reading platform is like a piece of shit, and it doesn't let you take screenshots. There's other issues with it. It's not just a piece of shit because it doesn't allow you to take screenshots, but it makes it hard to show you what I'm talking about, but I'll include like some pictures I took of my screen. But yeah, just overall very strange and not good. And then the last one that started running in Weekly Shonen Magazine was Lilimholic. This is a fan service rom-com series. It's one of those this cute girl is obsessed with me type series. I think Mistress Kanon is one of those, and Medaka is also one of those, so there's a lot of those in this magazine. I put this in the dropped tier because the main girl does not have a personality I find attractive, which is very much just personal taste. I like my ladies with a little more backbone. It is very fan service heavy, so if you don't like fan service, not for you, but I think this is readable. The art style is so cute and so unique that I went, wait, this looks kind of familiar. And lo and behold, after searching it up, this is by the same mangaka that made Boyfriend Sometimes Girlfriend, which was a manga series I read last year and reviewed. That one was a slightly force feminization fetishy rom-com. This is like a straight rom-com. That one had like a little bit more, you know, the kink was a little bit weirder. This is like very vanilla. It's just straight up, this girl is a succubus and she's hot and she likes the main character. And it's cute enough, it's just, it doesn't really do anything for me. But if you like that kind of stuff, if you like succubi and cute girls, feel free to check it out. She is very well drawn. The mangaka is very talented. I'm gonna go through all the series that have ended in Jump Plus, and then I'll do all the series that have started in Jump Plus. Since the last time that I did a Jump Plus update, it's only been like a couple months, but Jump Plus is a different animal. The amount of series that start and end in this magazine are honestly difficult to keep up with. I could do an update video on Jump Plus every single month because of the sheer amount of series that circulate in and out of it, but I'm not going to. So the series that have ended are Baseball, Civilizations, Aliens, Chainsawman Pt2, which I will talk about a little bit more, Nightlight Hounds, which I gave the first volume 4 stars, but I did not read any more of it. It is a Mafia series. Convenience Store Fantasia, Demon King's branch, that was an Indies series. Monica the Human and the Slaughter Robot, this was a one-shot, short-term, intensive serialization. It had 8 chapters, 1 volume. I gave this 4 stars. It was pretty solid as a one-shot, and I did like that it tackled some issues that school-aged children would face, so it feels kind of more relevant for them to read. Hetalia World Stars. This, by the way, was the oldest series running in Jump Plus, so it's crazy that it's actually ended. It started in 2014 and ran for 12 entire years. There is still one more Hetalia series in the magazine, Hetalia Gangsters, though. World's End Fantasia also ended, also Love and the Little Mermaid, that was another Indies series. The Trembling Right Hand ended, Beast Country ended, that was another Indies series. And lastly, The Creepy and the Freaky ended. Alright, Chainsawman Pt2 review really quick. Yeah, unfortunately it was good. My rating for Part 2 after I finished it was 3 stars. However, I think it is imperative if you read Chainsawman Pt2 weekly that you go back and read the entire thing in one go. It is such a different experience that it's honestly kind of absurd. The pacing is such a massive part of Chainsawman Part 2, and reading it all at once will completely turn it into a different story. When you read it all at once, it's far easier to see the parallels that Fujimoto very carefully puts into the work. I think one of the most noticeable and obvious parallels is at the beginning of the series, there's a scene with Falling Devil in which one of the characters is helping the other character, and then by the end of the series, there's another scene with Falling Devil, and their places have reversed, and that happens like again and again throughout the story. So yeah, Fujimoto is still an asshole. However, he is a very good writer, and the story that he wanted to tell, I really truly do think he did manage to tell completely and solidly in Chainsawman Part 2. That is not to say there are no issues anywhere. Very clearly, the art degraded halfway through this part, and it just got worse and worse and worse, and it made scenes that should have hit harder, I think, a little bit weaker because the art was not as strong, and there are slight places where I would change certain things like the pacing. But overall, once I reread it, I completely understood what Fujimoto was trying to do. Chainsawman Part 2 is a regression arc for Denji, and it is so extremely painful to read. Regression arcs are always incredibly frustrating, and I think reading a regression arc for Chainsaw Man specifically, this character written by this creator, it kind of broke people's brains. It was starting to border on lobotomy Kaisen levels of, oh my god, why am I reading this every single week? Once you don't have to watch this guy fuck up his life week after week after week for years, once you can sit down and just read it all at once, it's okay. Like, it's fine. I mean, what Denji does is not fine, but you get what the story is trying to say. And then by the end, you understand the sacrifice that is made, and it makes sense because it's essentially saying even after this guy fucks up again and again and again to the point where he literally has nothing left because he cannot help himself, this other character still has faith in him. This other character is truly his best friend, and because of that, he's willing to give it all for some brief possibility that things will get better for Denji. And that's very powerful. I could get into specifics. There's a lot of things that are very interesting to talk about with Chainsaw Man, and I think warrant talking about. However, last time I tried talking about it, it was over 45 minutes straight, and I also think it's just one of those things where people kind of need to read it for themselves. So feel free to bring up things about Chainsaw Man Part 2 if you want to talk about them in the comments. I'd be more than happy to. Chainsaw Man Part 2 is 4 stars for me, and it is a pretty solid 4 stars. Despite everything, despite Fujimoto being an absolute jackass and turning you-know-who into yakitori and turning you-know-who into sashimi, despite everything, it's still very good. And unfortunately, that means I will be reading anything else that Fujimoto creates, that beautiful, beautiful messed up brain of his. A lot of new things have started, so we'll start with Aaron the Southpaw. This is not actually a new series, but a continuation of an old series that is not available on Jump Plus. So unless you're Japanese and can read it on the Japanese site, the first chapter that you have available to you in English is chapter 207. Rest assured, I will not be starting a series from chapter 207. So if they want us to read Aaron the Southpaw, they're gonna have to put the official English for the first 200 plus chapters on the Manga Plus app. Mizunoke, A Tale of Mysterious Water Dwellers, I dropped this for the art. Blobtopia, I dropped this because it didn't hook me. Oracles of Kami, I gave this one a 4 stars. It is very unique. The main character dynamic reminds me of Full Metal Alchemist, very much a guy, and then his brother, who is not exactly human. The art for the series is very interesting and quite unique, so I do like it, and I will be continuing to follow it. It has like a little bit of a folklore-ish feel, and I also did love the body horror as well. Moshine Project, I dropped this because it is drama. It was really painful to read. So if I were to read this series, I would not read it weekly. I would wait for it to continue and then read. It's about the exploitation of innocent, essentially childlike aliens by capitalism. If I want to read that, I could just walk out into the real world. Axe mangaka and doujin creator, I give this one a 3 stars. This is very much rated for it's good for what it is. This is a relatively lighthearted comedic series about a mangaka whose series gets axed and then he falls into despair, but then he meets a fan who is a doujin creator, and it turns out that she loves the characters from his series, and that actually makes him really happy and encourages him to keep drawing manga. The next one is Subaru the Invincible. This is a martial arts series. I gave this one 3 stars. This definitely has potential to move up to 4. I'm just waiting to see how it goes as it continues. The base premise for this is very promising. It's about a martial artist who is so good that he cannot be defeated. And because of that, he starts to lose his interest in martial arts. That is so fascinating, and the art is actually pretty interesting too. I do like the main character's design, and I look forward to seeing where this goes. It's difficult to say something's like Baki, but you know, it's a little bit like that. It's very over the top and fun. The next one is The Chrysalis Heart. This is highly problematic. Somehow both Lolicon and Shotacon, I do not recommend this series. The next one is Hitoner. This is a little bit strange. There's an underlying tone of like horniness in this series, and it's not furry horniness, despite the premise being that the entire world is anthropomorphized animals. It's kind of more like straight man horniness, where they're into office ladies in pencil skirts and cat ears, but it's not a fan service series. The tone is a little bit strange. Satanica, it's not good. World Wide Web Miko. This one I gave 3 stars. This is also, I think it's slightly waifu baiting a little bit. I don't think it's considered moe, but there's like this kind of thing where people are really into cute girls doing quirky things when they're wearing glasses. I don't know like what kind of genre that is, but that's very much like a niche that this series is going for, bordering on the Toho audience. It's about this girl who can kind of do magic by sending her thoughts into the television, and when she does that, she can access the internet. Accessing the internet in this series is a magical power that you have to be a shrine maiden to be able to do. It feels relatively comedic, slice of life-ish, but the focus is very much a cute girl with glasses doing things. Lunolita, I gave this one a 4 stars, a very promising start. This does contain potentially upsetting topics, including the kidnapping of children, so, you know, be careful with that. It's about a girl who relearns how to love wearing Lolita fashion. It's very much like a fashion-focused series, which is kind of cute. The next one was Hey Devil Girl. This was very young. And the last series that has recently launched in Jump Plus is Twilight Blade. I gave this one a 4 stars as well. The art for this looks very good, and the first chapter was really promising. I will have to read more of it when it comes out and see where the story goes, but so far so good. It's a little bit of a battle shonen. I do like the body horror aspects of the monsters, and the implication that the child that the main character has adopted is potentially a monster, or has some ties to them. Very interesting overall. Here is my updated Jump Plus tier list. I'm gonna stop putting the Indies series on here because there was a controversy recently where one of the Indies series in Jump Plus used AI for the background in their art, and Jump Plus has not canceled that series, which is in a way an endorsement of the usage of AI in their product, because they have not punished the mangaka who used the AI, which means they condone it. I'm gonna not put any more Indies series on my tier list. Also, the Indies series are not translated into English, so even if I were to want to check them out, it's literally just me looking at the art for them, so we're just gonna nix those completely going forward. Yeah, nothing really has changed. I've been keeping up with the series that I've been enjoying. I did catch up to Hope You're Happy Lemon, and it is very good. If you like shonen romances, feel free to check it out. They're actually making progress. However, I am stressed out because I like both of the girls in the series. So I'm hoping that by the end, everyone's happy and they don't have to choose. You know, all three of them have two hands. We don't have to make anyone sad and unloved. The Battering Tales, I believe, has returned from hiatus, and Ruri has come off of hiatus as well, though that series I really do think will continue to suffer from irregular serialization issues probably in the future. Alright, that is pretty much it. Here's the final updated Weekly Shonen Jump tier list. If you're looking for anything new to read, feel free to check out anything 4 stars and up from this magazine. They're all very good. I am still mourning Alien Headbutt a lot, and I probably will look forward to picking up the Japanese physical volume when it comes out. I think that this one was a genuine fumble from Weekly Shonen Jump, and I really hope that the magazine learns from this, and I really look forward to seeing what the creator Inui does in the future. They're off to a fantastic start. My voice is giving out, so I'm gonna leave it here, but I will see you in the next video. Once Sakamoto Days ends, I will want to talk about it. It just depends on whether or not it's gonna be a solo Sakamoto Days video or an overall update to the magazine. Feel free to let me know what you think of the new series in the magazine. I will see you next time.